I used to hate this last chapter. I don't know, I might still hate it. As the last chapter. These are guests' last words to us. What will the next 2 decades bring? How will anthropologists use the tools of our discipline to understand the impact of these changes on people and their communities across the globe? I'm pretty sure he wrote this before ChatGPT. In fact, he's been asking these questions for at least 2 editions now, so it was a long time ago. What will the next 2 decades bring? I don't know. What will they bring?
Like BlackBerry within like what 7, 8 years, and then from BlackBerry to iPhone in a year, 2 years.
It's all the same.
I like how that's your metric.
Dude, time is weird.
Time is weird. What will the next 2 decades bring? First question. That's a good question. So what will the next 2 months bring? How will anthropologists use the tools of our discipline? I guess.
Don't you hang with this guy?
Don't I have? No, I couldn't hang with this guy. I already told you I wasn't allowed to. Back when he was doing keggers, that was fun. Now that he does cocktail hours, I don't do that stuff, man. Tapas. What kind of baloney is that? Too artsy. I'd say, does anybody give a shit how anthropologists use the tools of our? Do you care about that? How will anthropologists use the tools of this question, this last question?
It just sounds like it's just saying how will anthropologists be anthropologists? Be anthropologists.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. I guess somebody cares. I might care, I guess.
There's no answer.
I would say that anthropology students, college students, shouldn't care. I wouldn't want you to care about this question. Who cares? You do want to know what the next 2 decades bring, and you want to know how to understand that, but you don't care what anthropologists do you? Maybe somebody does.
It's my major.
It's your major. Should you care? I'm going to give you a different conclusion. Don't copy this down. This is from an intro textbook. This is about a dozen years ago. I used to use it when people tried to write these big, beautiful conclusions.
What is this? Power comes great responsibility.
It's a perilous and fearsome freedom, a difficult freedom to grasp and to wield. Nevertheless, the freedom is there, and in this tension of freedom and constraint lies our future. It is up to us to create it. Are you inspired now? Yeah, it is up to us to create it. There you go.
Creating?
Yeah, you're creating it. You're creating the future, the freedom. Look at that. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there's a huge difference. One of them's asking, what's going to happen to us? What will the next 2 decades bring? How will we understand it? That's the now. That's guess today. These people are like, it's up to us to create it. This is very 2012, by the way. 2012, we were still on top of the world.
I was gonna say when people had hope.
We're in the middle of the Obama years. People were still thinking that, what was his slogan? We are the ones we've been waiting for. Hope and change. Yeah, we did great.
Yeah.
We did great, didn't we? That was great. We created the future, man. So in other anthropology textbooks, a lot of anthropology used textbooks ended with a chapter that would be applying anthropology. So it's like, you've learned all this stuff, now how do you apply it in the world? It used to be a lot of textbooks ended with a globalization chapter. It was like, this is the new world. Now most people just put the globalization, as Guest does all throughout, if they talk about it at all. It's been a long time since I saw a globalization chapter at the end, but they used to almost all end that way. Actually, the textbook authors that I just showed you started ending their textbook with medical anthropology and health, which makes sense. And then actually, guess what the newest ending chapter is these days? Almost everybody's just starting to end their textbooks with this chapter. Not art and media, not COVID, that would be health. Think. What are all the anthropologists excited about these days? Huh?
Collections.
No.
Social media?
No. It's close to what you're doing. What do you do in your major?
Environmental sustainability?
Yeah. Everybody wants to end with sustainability now. That's the last chapter of many anthropology textbooks. I just did that in intro today. Just this morning, we did sustainability. It's very depressing. What will the next 2 decades bring? What will the next 2 months bring? But no, guest says art and media. If you thought this was a good idea, I couldn't get anybody to say this is a terrible idea. But anyway, anybody want to change their mind? Yeah,
Fine.
it's fine. What is art? What is art? We're not going to answer that question. But what I will say is that anthropology was one of the key players in taking this idea of art, which was once confined to the elite museum goers of Western societies. We said only we have art. Now what do we say, Liv?
Everyone is art. Everyone does art.
Everyone does art. So 100 years ago, you wouldn't have gone somewhere else, and well, maybe 150 years ago, Picasso was a little more expansive than others, but in general, people would say that what others were doing in other societies weren't art, that art was only what we did in civilized Western European societies. And so Guest gives us an example of a painter's workshop from South Africa 100,000 years ago. Why does he give us that? Why is this so exciting to anthropologists? Especially archaeologists, they love this shit.
Which is old.
Art is old. Okay, so that's one thing that we like about it. It's old. We like that it's old. What else do we like about it? Eternal. Can't get rid of it. That is a long time ago, so we'll call it forever. For since humans were coming up. It's also important. Why is it so important that it's in South Africa? Exactly. No, it's down there in Africa, South Africa, because when you go into that art history class down there in Anderson, is that where they teach them?
Yes.
They start out with those, hey, a lot of people start off with those 32,000-year-old cave paintings, which I think are more like 36, maybe even 40,000 years old. And in some ways, what anthropology is saying is, no, that's important. Those are cool, but the roots of art actually go further back. In fact, we read this article about the oldest known cave painting of animals in Indonesia. So take that, you French people. We got cave paintings in Indonesia that are even older than that. Yeah, it's pretty good. You can go there. That is a very good question. Is it art? And it relates to something which is maybe one of the interesting things about this chapter. So, anthropology in general. Should we consider that cave painting to be an instance of art? Now, on the one hand, I would say, of course, it's a sign that everybody has art. And in fact, what anthropology has done is use this tool, I would say the hammer of anthropology is relativism, cultural relativism. And it starts with culture itself, because at one point, people said that only the civilized people, that was the hallmark of culture itself, that only certain people at the top had culture. Actually, what else could we put in this blank? Oh, wait a second. Here, so we went from only we have culture to everybody has culture, right? We went from only we the civilized have art to everyone has art. You gave us another example actually in your comment. Ethnomusicology. Why would we have to call something ethnomusicology? Yeah, one can imagine back in the 1930s that there was some music professor sitting there in front of a piano with a bunch of classical music and be like, go to prisons and record music? That's not music. I can imagine somebody saying, that's not even worth your time, Lomax or whatever your name is. What are you doing going off and recording these things? That's not even really music. That's just a bunch of goofy stuff that they're doing, playing with their hands and stuff. That's not music. I'm exaggerating perhaps, but maybe not much. You can fill in this blank with other things. What's something else that people thought only we had and other people did something stupid that wasn't even up to par? Yes, language, written language and language in general, actually. There are all kinds of people that thought that there are only a few good languages and the rest of them are baby talk and don't have enough words and aren't very complicated. And why study that? What else? Actually, almost every chapter that we've read. Humor. I would say, Silas, the thing is, I'm thinking about things that people, I'm not saying nobody cares about humor. Humor is something that we probably would associate with the people outside of the elites. We don't really value it that much. Let me contrast that with something like religion, for example. In the old days, we would say, there's only one religion, or maybe we'll give them 3 religions or 5, and then the rest of them is just superstition and magic and goofiness. Language, religion, art, music, these things that people wanted to have. So, the relativizing hammer. On the one hand, you still sometimes do need a relativizing hammer, because every so often you run into somebody who's like, that's not music, that's not art, that's not religion, that's stupid. So then you have to pull out your relativizing hammer and say, no, man, this is, everybody has art, everybody has culture, everybody has religion. Okay, I'll give it to you. Everybody has humor. You just have to learn how to recognize it. You have to put them in your shoes. You have to get out of your own thing. So sometimes you do need this relativizing hammer. But a kid discovers a hammer. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And the problem is, on a theoretical level, if we take this thing that was once this elite purview, art, and we then say, oh, the people in Indonesia, when they're doing a cave painting, that's art. What we're doing is actually universalizing something that might be very specific to Western society, and we're basically evaluating other people on the basis of what goes on in the West. And so we're missing out on why people might have done that. This can be done with carvings and all sorts. Like, people were not necessarily using this in our notion of art. They were just being alive. They were doing this stuff and they were very skilled at it. But to make that into art puts that into our framework. And so there's this whole theoretical issue, which I have done in other classes. It gets very heady, very interesting. And it is this larger issue about if we just take our categories and extend them out, Western categories, not our Western categories, and then try to extend them out to everybody, it loses the value of what people were actually doing when they were making music in prison. That there was a very specific context of that. It was not meant to be classicized. I mean, maybe they didn't want it to be ethnomusicologized. Maybe they just wanted to say something and to take it out of that context and make you study it. And it might not get at the value of that. So there's a whole interesting theoretical discussion to do that. It has mainly to do with that question of what will anthropologists do in the next 2 decades, which I don't think most of you care about. What I care about more, me too, is that actually this idea of cultural relativism, well, let me ask you this. How have we been doing on this in America? Has this worked? All that thing, the 2012 thing, when I said we're about to create this great future, how are we doing? Future great. No, it didn't work. It backfired. It does not seem to have worked in the US, at least as far as I can tell. This whole idea that everybody has art, everybody has language and music and politics and economics and religion, and we should value them all. I feel like that's not working. I feel like we're getting the backlash to that. And it should be working. All the people that are coming in, all these people that are coming in, Ron DeSantis went to, I don't know, Harvard or Yale. Trump went to University of Pennsylvania, he says. Where did Vance go? He went to Yale. He should know all this stuff. So the people even at the top of US society don't seem to have gotten it. The other issue is it can backfire. or the idea that we're all human together, united by art. Does that work? When you put up an art exhibit and try to bring people closer together, what happens? It's an interesting example. So this person curated an exhibit of art from the Middle East, Middle Eastern art, but was trying to unite us all as humanity. But the curation of it was basically the art that was done by women who were critical of Islam. And so basically what Guest and the anthropologist says is it ends up reproducing some very smug assumptions. So I thought it was just worth thinking about. In the process of trying to accentuate common humanity through art, ask this as a question, could curators and funders' narrow selections have reinforced assumed oppositions between freedom and oppression, understanding and ignorance, civilization and barbarism? So in some ways, the intention was to create this bridge and recognize the humanity of each going into prison and recording some songs, but it ends up reinforcing these assumed oppositions when people go to this place. Now, for me, Guest is one of the best people at, whenever he talks about culture, he does keep that hammer, the relativizing hammer, close to another tool. I'm going to call the wrench. What's always close here at hand, whenever we're talking about culture and art, what are we also maybe talking about too? Power. So Gust is good at doing the relativizing first, but he always throws in the wrench of power. In every chapter, he's given us that little connection to power. He's also, I think, been good at showing us how we might call intersectionality, or how people are interconnected. So he talks about how anthropologists don't just study art, we study how art is connected to or embedded in race, ethnicity, class, gender, sexuality, politics, religion, and economics. So what I will say in Guest's favor is he has been the best at preserving the idea of culture, not discarding it, which I've sometimes wanted to do, because a lot of times it's their culture excuse or phrase becomes, it backfires a lot, let us say. But if we keep it close to these intersectional power issues, we'll probably be okay. And so actually, in the thinking like an anthropologist section, the actual last words of the book maybe are better. Thinking like an anthropologist about the world of art can give you a more complete set of tools for comprehending this complex part of human culture, understanding your own creativity, and engaging the world around you. There you go. You can understand your own creativity. You can engage the world around you. You can create the future. Onward. You might be wondering though, something's missing here. What's missing?
Media.
Media! Yeah, what about the media? There was supposed to be art and media. What happened to the media?
It's part of the art.
It's part of the art? You're just going to say it's part of the art? What is media?
Online.
It's what we consume.
Oh, true. It's the
Is
same
it?
thing.
It's things that we can visually consume and
I don't know what
understand.
media is. He never even asked what media is. He just asked, how do art and media intersect? I have no idea what media is. It's got to be somewhere. And then he gives us this really huge quote. Media is reshaping human life in every part of the world as it increasingly permeates the routines of daily life. That's pretty big. That's pretty huge. Reshaping human life in every part of the world. If something is that huge, don't you think it should get more than 3 pages?
It's still more recent though than religion.
But you were just talking about phone evolution and how, I don't know what you were saying about.
Oh, yeah, and a couple.
If you go over to the Literature and Media Studies department, you'll get a very expansive definition of media. If everybody has art, everybody definitely has media, right? So yeah, Shakespeare is media. It's all media, folks. Everything is media. I'm media. You're doing media right now. We're all doing media. It's reshaping human life in every part of the world. And so he talks about this, the global mediascape. I wanted to know if it's really connecting us in a global way. I'm more concerned though, or at least right now, with a slightly different question. What happened?
The best form of media.
Why didn't the memes? I thought the memes were supposed to save us. You know what I mean? I thought the memes.
Really
memes
mean
were
it. That's
supposed
the
to
worst
say-
part.
Remember the debate where Trump went on and on about they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. And what that was supposed to be, like, for one thing, that was super offensive. It was targeted. Well, for one thing, it was super wrong. It was just incorrect. It was terribly offensive. It was aimed at Haitian people who always get completely dragged in the United States. And that's why I keep trying to tell you how important Haiti has been to the United States, but persecuting Haitians is a very old American US pastime. And so for me, when everybody was remixing his words and putting it up on memes and just watch this dance party mix of they're eating the dogs. No, I'm not going to play it for you because it didn't work. Because I thought people were doing that because it was going to be a campaign killer. That should have been it. But no, it's celebrated. It's like that became the fun Trump, Trump dog protector now. Like I can't even put up the stuff. Wait, what happened? The memes are supposed to convince people.
I just thought it was funny.
I think it was
I
just
didn't
so
believe that it was gonna
ridiculous.
change people's minds because people's minds are impossible to change.
I thought people were smarter than
I did assume that
They
people
were.
were smarter than they were, it's true, but I don't blame.
Didn't meme hard enough. It didn't make any sense. I thought, again,
That's a very,
when
that's
that,
a whole-
money.
that's a very hopeful assumption of you.
I again thought that when a comedian opened up with this line about like that he saw, this was for the Trump rally in Manhattan, that Puerto Rico was mistaken for a floating island of garbage, I thought it actually might change some votes here and there. Didn't. The memes didn't save us. Anyway, there you go. Art and media. After reading this chapter, you should be able to apply these questions to situations in which you encounter art and media and the intersections of real life, play, politics, and creative expression. So maybe you can do it. Maybe you can save us with memes.
Yeah, I believe in
I'm
that.
gonna go on your Facebook and I better see a lot of memes.
I don't know. Memes don't seem to be working for me. They don't seem to work out there. I don't think I can do any better. I can't make the memes. The only thing I can do, if I'm here in 2 months, is teach 2 classes. All right. So there's one class called the History of Anthropological Thought, but I'm putting that in quotes because that might just be the history of thought now. That's how cool it's going to be. We're going to read the book Imagining for Real, Essays on Creation, Attention, and Correspondence. This is going to blow you away. Imagining the history of human imagination. For a senior capstone, we're going to read a book called People Before Markets, which is about, in some ways, the practical application of anthropological studies and whether or not we can do those.